Hello, and welcome to this episode of The Next Page. The Next Page is a program that focuses on literacy in all forms across our region, and we are a program that is co-sponsored and co-produced by the Wayne County Literacy Coalition and the organization Birth to Five. The mission of both organizations is to promote literacy in all of its forms to all of our members of our community. And again, I want to welcome you to this episode of The Next Page. My guest today is Nathan Wirrig, and Nathan is a teacher and the owner of Beatree Yoga here in Richmond, Indiana. And Nathan has joined us today because today we transition to a new form of literacy discussion. Today we begin discussing the literacy of wellness, and Nathan, specifically today, the literacy of our bodies. Now, some of our Next Page viewers are probably at this point thinking of changing the channel. Don't do that. Or maybe they're telling their friends to tune in. We're going to talk about literacy of the body. But what does that really mean, Nathan, to be able to read and understand our bodies?
Well, Angie, it's super, super important. We live in these bodies. We're born with them, and they're here with us until the day that we die. So to be able to listen to your body and know what it's telling you is vital, and vital to experiencing everything that your life has to offer.
Yeah.
So we can look at this in various ways. We've all been given our five senses: our sight, our touch, our smell, our taste, and what am I missing?
Touch, taste, smell, sound, right?
Yeah, sound.
Exactly.
There we go. So we have all these five senses, and just picking up on these five senses and tuning into them, just like you tune into this TV station every week, is something that we can do in order to build or start to build our body literacy. It's this communication that we have with our body, and this communication that we have with the outside world.
And we're reading or we're listening, sometimes with our ears and sometimes with our eyes, but body literacy entails a kind of inner soundboarding. How does that go, Nathan? How do we listen to our body if we're not using our ears? Because our body doesn't always make noises that we can pick up with that sense. What are some other kinds of listening we do?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it's true. Our body doesn't actually speak to us in a language that we know. It does speak to us, and it speaks to our brain quite often. There's communication going on all the time that we're oftentimes not tuned into. We go throughout our days, and oftentimes we do experience communication, and maybe it's in the form of pain. And a lot of times we're in a state of pain, and we ignore it, and we continue to move on with whatever activities we're going through. And we kind of push it to the side, or sometimes we mask it with various means. And that's a way of really closing off that channel of communication between the body and the self. And
seems like if we're not listening, probably the body's eventually going to demand attention.
It will. If we continue to ignore it, it's going to explode. And usually that comes in some sort of disease or extreme injury. It usually takes months for those things to build up in the body.
Oh, that's a great point. And we do get signals. When we think about listening to our bodies and body literacy, what are some tools or some ways that we can access other outside pathways to bring into our daily way of being so that we're hearing our body a little bit better?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And a lot of times what I have people do when they're first starting this communication process with their body is we call it mindfulness, and it might be waking up 5 minutes early in the morning and sitting up in your bed and not doing anything, but just focusing in on the fact that you're breathing. That's a great way of being in communication with your body. We can use our breath to control the body. We can use it to slow down our heart rate, to calm us. We notice when we get angry or anxious that our breath starts to become more rapid and jagged. But we have control over that. It's something that it can be voluntary or involuntary.
I think immediately of stress reactions we have. Sometimes they're good stress reactions. I'm really excited. Sometimes they're bad stress reactions. I'm scared. So are you saying that when I'm having that reaction, I have a way to control that myself?
You do, absolutely. So, and it can be a little tricky at first when you're just beginning this process of communicating with the body and communicating through your breath. So it might seem like you don't have control over the situation, but you really do. With this practice and with this practice of waking up each day and just recognizing the fact that you are breathing and the fact that you have control over elongating or shortening the breath will help you in those situations, such as anxiety or anger or even extreme elation. We see a change in breath.
We don't think about our breath. You know, as you're talking about that, I'm sort of doing an inventory of my going through my day, the typical activities that I participate in. And I've got to admit, Nathan, maybe like some of my viewers, rarely do I stop and think about breathing. Tell me a little bit about about yourself, how you came to learn about breathing, and maybe some training or teaching that's accessible to the community that might help us know about that too. Tell us a little bit about how you came to learn about these things.
Well, certainly, I can tell you my background in it is through my yoga training. And in yoga, we call breath work, we call it pranayama, which is just a really fancy word for training your breath or recognizing the fact that you're inhaling and exhaling. And we're all doing it. We all do it every single day. We do it every minute of the day. And when we don't, we're not here.
Yes.
So it is known in the yoga world as kind of being a life source, and it is. I mean, it's an indicator of your life. It's a vital sign that you're living. So I was first introduced to it maybe when I was 16 or 17 with some breath work. And it was really just slowing down the breath and recognizing how when the breath slowed down, the heart rate also slowed down. So that's something that I really start with people who are getting into the practice of breath work.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So you have been teaching yoga and teaching these techniques. When you say the word yoga, I have to admit also, my head explodes with all of the reading I've been doing as an over 55 person. For the last 5 years at least, I've been voraciously consuming information about how to improve the quality of my life, how to live longer because I've got grandchildren, like many of my viewers, and how to live a higher quality life while I'm doing that. And so I have discovered yoga, 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 yoga in all of my publications and the research. Nathan, is breathing as a part of yoga part of this fountain of youth and fountain to health?
Well, a lot of people seem to think so, and a lot of the literature that's coming out these days seems to think so as well. Scientists, for many years, for decades, have been starting to look at the what do you want to say, the benefits of yoga, these youth-giving properties of yoga. And we can say youth-giving, but really what it's doing is it's creating a better quality of life. It's keeping your body in a better shape as you gain age.
Yes.
So you tend to feel younger. So we can say it is a fountain of youth sort of thing.
Beautiful.
But yes, that's what we're seeing is huge benefits in the yoga world, and it's fantastic, especially for people who are gaining age.
Yes.
It's not something that is high intensity. It's not like many of your other forms of exercise. So it's gentle and it's nurturing for the body.
And maybe it will surprise some of our viewers to know that breathing is a huge part of yoga. I'm afraid that when our viewers might hear the word yoga, they think of strange positions
Absolutely.
or weird religions, but that's not what yoga is at all. Could you talk to us a little bit about the physical practice of yoga that accompanies the other physical practice of breathing?
Yeah, certainly. So like I said, yoga in breath work is called pranayama. Yoga in physical work, we call it asana. And so these words, they don't have to mean anything to you. They just mean posture and breath. But we pair them together oftentimes. So the postures are very, very gentle. And many of them, the extreme postures that we see, and we might see them on magazines or we see them on the internet. There's a new craze now is to put yourself in a posture and take a picture of yourself.
A selfie?
A selfie in a posture.
Would we call it a yelfie?
We could call it a yelfie, a yoga selfie. Exactly. So many of these postures really were developed later on in the yoga world, in the yoga timeline. Yoga dates back to almost 5,000 years, what we know, and possibly even longer than that. So these newer postures, these more extreme postures, are things that come about, and they come about with the integration of gymnastics into yoga. But many of the postures are extremely gentle and very nurturing for the body.
Oh, I love that. And when we say the body, we don't even just mean arms and legs and extremities immediately being going back to that, listening to the inner body. Yoga works the organs and glands.
It does. It works the entire body. It works all of your internal organs, your digestive organs, your heart, your lungs, your liver, which is so important, and it controls many functions in the body. So yes, there's more than just the muscular skeleton part of the body, more than just the bones and muscles.
I love that.
Yes.
And Nathan, did I hear you correctly that yoga is accessible to anybody?
It is. So it's accessible to anybody in any body, we should say. So a lot of times people come to me and they're like, oh, I can't do yoga. I can't touch my toes, or, I'm way too inflexible for yoga. And I tell them, or I ask them rather, can you breathe? And usually the response is like, oh, of course I can breathe. And my response to that is, okay, you can do yoga. Because it really is not a matter of putting your legs behind your head or, contorting yourself into an awful posture, but rather it's a means of nurturing the body and just gaining flexibility a little step at a time.
I love that. And you are located in your practice and in your mentorship in yoga here in Richmond in the Depot District. I know that occasionally you go out into the community and you do demonstrations. Do you have anything coming up or any advice for our viewers if you've intrigued them today? How can they pursue an introduction to yoga?
Absolutely. Well, we do go out into the community quite often, and it's my goal to make yoga accessible to everybody. I believe that everybody deserves the chance to participate in such a practice, something that I have found great benefit from, and I want to share it with others. So we do go out for various community events. One of the big events that we had this year was what was it called? The fitness event that was in the park. I totally forget the name of it. It's in Glen Miller every summer.
Beautiful.
That was one of our biggest events that we had this year, and we do demonstrations there. Every once in a while we offer free classes and open houses.
Beautiful.
So I guess a place to check would be on our website, and we're always updating. So it's beatrieyoga.com, and that is where we keep everything going on, all of our events.
Nathan, thank you for joining us to kick off our series on literacy of the body and literacy of wellness. I know our viewers have really benefited from you being here today.
Thank you so much, Angie. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Hello, and welcome to the Birth to 5 segment of The Next Page. I'm Jim Cohen, the Executive Director of Birth to 5, and today our guest is Cindy Isaacs, and we're going to be talking about an initiative that Parents as Teachers have called Supporting Care Providers. Cindy, welcome. It's great to have you back.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here.
Good. Could you take a second and bring our viewers up to date again on your background and how you wound up with Parents as Teachers and what kind of training you've received?
I was a PE, recreation, and health major in college, got my bachelor's. I've worked with children most all my life in one capacity or another. In a daycare, I taught tumbling and gymnastics. I came to Birth to 5 just 3 years ago. We receive a lot of training. It was a week's training to get us just initiated into the program. And then I received a week's training with supporting care providers. And then we receive continual training each year.
Right, and I want to add the fact that the whole parents as teachers and actually whole Birth to Five staff participates in ongoing seminars and training. As a matter of fact, we were in Indianapolis a couple of weeks ago on a training that talked about early brain development and learning in children. So tell us about this Supporting Care Providers program. What's the mission of that program?
The mission of Supporting Care Providers is to get into area daycares, both home daycares and larger facilities, to work with the teachers that are in there on different activities and to promote development in all areas of the child.
So it sounds like, in some respects, this is kind of like the home visit for daycare centers.
It is. Instead of working with the parent, though, we're working with the teachers.
With the teachers. So how does that work? How does a visit with them look like? Or what does that look like when you go there?
I take an activity like you do on a home visit and go over it with the teachers. It focuses on a specific development area, either motor skills or language development or something. And we do the activity with all the children. The teachers participate. And then I leave information for the teachers on how to expand the activity. There's also a piece of information that goes home to the parents that gives them ideas on doing similar activities with their child at home.
Okay, so since you're working with a teacher who already has a structure or a curriculum that they're using, do you try to help them integrate the lesson that you're bringing into their overall curriculum?
Yes, it kind of meshes with what they're doing. A lot of times, if there's a specific thing they're working on, then I try to find an activity that goes along with that.
I see. Now, in typical daycare centers, they don't all have one age group. So you could be going into a daycare center that's serving kids from as young as maybe 6 months old to as much as 5 years old. So how do you compensate for that? How do you work
I have
with
a couple that do that. The youngest, though, is 2. Usually if they're younger than 2, that they don't bring them in. It's a good time for the older ones to help the younger ones to do a project. If we're doing puzzles or something, I'll put 2 together, a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and they'll work together on a puzzle or an activity. And so they're kind of helping and developing their social emotional skills at that level.
Now, do you have any idea or sense about how successful the daycare centers are in communicating these lessons to the parents?
I don't really know. I know they send the papers home.
Okay.
And I know the kids the children that I've seen out will introduce me to their parents, and the parents will often say, "Oh, they came home and told me what you did today at school." So I think it is getting to the home.
Good. Now, how do we identify the providers that we work with?
Any daycare, home, or facility is eligible for this program. They just need to call Birth to Five. When we started it about 2 years ago, we sent letters out and did an informational meeting, and then we had 1 home daycare, 3 facility daycares, and then I also go to the diplomas program at Richmond High School and work with the teen moms.
I see. So it's total voluntary, totally voluntary, and we want to make a point of letting folks know that there's no charge to the daycares for us to come in and help them. There's a program in the state called Paths to Quality, which kind of dovetails into into our conversation. Can you tell us a little bit about what Paths to Quality is?
Paths to Quality is a way of rating daycares, and it again is a purely voluntary, and you don't have to be in the Paths to Quality to have a good quality daycare, but it is a way for parents to look up daycares and to see maybe what some of the things they're doing. There's 4 levels. It provides training and education for the employees. It you meet a standard and then you move up a level, so level 4 is the highest. And it's, again, not to say that if you're not in it, you're not a good one.
Of course.
But it is a way for parents to be able to check out and for quality or for daycares to increase the quality of their daycare.
And I think, I'm sure a lot of our audience who have younger children are aware of and who are paying attention to early childhood educational issues in the state are aware of the fact that the state is moving in the direction of supporting preschools and other early learning activities. And as they do that, they do have a concern for the quality of the educational opportunities that we're going to be providing. So this paths to quality is kind of tied in a little bit to the preschool efforts that we're making. One of the things that we might want to talk about is, for example, the difference between a level 1 and a level 4. You sort of talked about it in a general sense, but
In order to be, with each step, you have to do more. So the first one is a basic health safety issues.
Right.
Then you need to have a curriculum if you're going to go up to the next level. And then you have to provide training for your employees.
So when we talk about a curriculum, what for folks that, I mean, we throw that word around a lot, but I don't know if everybody really understands. So a curriculum would be?
It's a plan to have, to introduce preschool concepts of shapes, colors, numbers, letters, all those kind of things.
So we have to think about curriculum in a daycare or in a preschool setting the same way we would think about a curriculum in first grade, second grade, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. The level 4 is the highest. What do you know or have a sense of what's the major requirement for level 4?
I think at level 4 you have to become a mentor for another daycare that is wanting to try to move up the levels.
Correct. And I think you pointed out to me earlier that the Paths to Quality program is not a certification program by the state, but it's a way for the state to reach out and support providers the same way we do and help them create a quality environment for children. But we can point out the fact that level 4 in Paths to Quality providers, in order to attain a level 4, they also have to have certification from a national organization that certifies early learning providers. So it sounds like Birth to 5 is really, and Parents as Teachers has really reached out well to early learning providers, and we're kind of in a good place because as the county starts looking at preschool opportunities, we're going to have more providers that are at level 3 and level 4.
One of the things I did not mention was that I also can do screenings at the daycares. I have done it at 2 daycares in town. One, I trained 2 of the other teachers and we did the whole daycare, and then the other group I did had one of the girls trained and we did all of their children.
Now when you talk about screenings, let's clarify for our audience exactly what we mean.
It's an age level screening to check their development in the social, emotional, intellectual, language, and motor areas.
Are we ever in a position where we can do any of the healthcare screenings for daycares like that?
We can do a hearing screening,
Right.
but that's all we've got right now.
Okay, well that's good. Okay. Well, Cindy, thank you very much. It's great to have you back again, and we look forward to seeing you again in the future.
Thanks.
And that's all for today, folks, and we look forward to seeing you next month on the Birth to 5 segment of The Next Page.